He stepped into the lobby he had built with his own vision, only to feel every whisper of biased press against his skin. A polite receptionist, her eyes cool behind a facade of courtesy, pronounced his name not found, as if his black skin had no place in this gilded hall. Each carefully measured apology rang hollow, embedding a fresh ache of humiliation in his chest. They saw him not as the CEO whose signature hung above every door, but as an uninvited guest, an intruder in his own empire. In that moment, his power felt stripped away, leaving only the raw sting of being judged before he even spoke. And as the echo of the revolving doors closed behind him, he realized that the deepest wounds often come from those sworn to welcome you. Watch until the end to see how this incredible story unfolds, and let us know what time you're watching today. A hush settled over the lobby as dawn's first light slipped through the tall glass windows, scattering soft gold onto the polished marble floor. The air smelled of cool stone and freshly ground coffee, with a faint whisper of white lilies from a florist stand nearby. In that moment, the grand lobby felt alive and expectant, like a stage set for something quietly dramatic. Velvet ropes curved around gleaming pillars, and the massive chandelier above, made of hundreds of crystal droplets, trembled as if holding its breath. Stepping through the revolving doors, Michael Carter paused just inside, his dark shoes pressing gently into the cold marble. He wore a tailored charcoal suit, classic, unassuming, and a crisp white shirt whose starched collar brushed against his neck like a reminder of his own rules. His tie, a deep navy with a small pattern of silver dots, was knotted with care, but loosened enough to signal readiness to breathe. In his hand, he carried a single leather folder, slim but weighty with papers that told the story of board meetings, profit forecasts, and quarterly goals. Yet for a moment, he let that folder hang at his side and simply inhaled the morning's hush. Michael's skin, smooth and rich brown, caught slivers of light as he tilted his head, surveying the lobby. His eyes were sharp and curious, eyes that had learned to read people in boardrooms, to spot the slightest tremor in a partner's voice. But this morning, they sought something else. He looked past the gilded railings, over to the broad staircase that led to the mezzanine lounge, where a choir of voices would soon gather for breakfast pastries and mumbled business deals. For now, it was quiet enough to hear a grandmother's soft tremor as she tightened her grip on her granddaughter's hand, or the distant clatter of cups being set on saucers at the coffee bar. A thin ribbon of anxiety ran through Michael's chest. He had been here dozens of times. After all, this was Carter's Crest, the hotel his family had built from a single downtown boarding house into one of the city's most respected luxury brands. Yet today felt different. Today he was just another guest, or at least that was the plan. The board had insisted he stay incognito, testing every level of service without the glare of his name above the front desk. They said he needed to see the hotel through fresh eyes, to sniff out any complacency in staff or cracks in protocol. Michael had agreed, though his palms dampened at the thought. He trusted his team, but he knew how easily trust could slip into habit. He set the folder on a low marble table beside a modern sculpture, an abstract swirl of metal that caught the light like liquid mercury. He opened it, careless for a moment, and ran his fingers over the papers inside. Guest profiles, anonymous feedback forms, blueprints of emergency exits. He had memorized all this months ago, yet something about holding them now, in the heart of the lobby, made the information feel raw. It wasn't numbers on a spreadsheet anymore. It was real people's experiences, each line representing hopes and frustrations. With a steadying breath, Michael closed the folder and slipped it into his briefcase. He straightened his shoulders and walked forward, his steps echoing in the lofty space. As he approached the reception desk, a sweeping counter of dark oak topped with a single vase of pale roses, he paused again. There, behind the desk, stood a young woman whose uniform was fresh and precise. Her name tag read Emily Thompson, and her brown hair was pulled back in a neat bun. She glanced up from her touchscreen monitor with a polite, practiced smile. Michael met her gaze, his own smile warm but reserved. He placed a hand on the folder he had lowered onto the counter. "Good morning," he said, his voice even carrying a hint of that careful politeness one might use with a stranger. "I have a reservation under the name Carter." Emily's eyes flickered for a fraction of a second, just long enough that Michael, trained to notice small tells, caught it. Her lips curved slightly before she registered his name. Then she touched the screen, fingertips dancing over the glass. "One moment, please," she said, her tone smooth, practiced. She swiped through the list of guests, paused, then frowned ever so slightly. Michael watched her, noting the crease between her brows. He was understanding. Every day, receptionists greeted dozens of unfamiliar names, but she hesitated longer than usual, as though something didn't add up. In the soft morning light, he could see the sparkle of nerves in her eyes. Perhaps she suspected a typo in the booking. Perhaps she wondered why Mr. Carter would choose this midweek check-in when he usually flew in for the weekend board dinners. He opened his mouth to clarify, but Emily lifted a hand and shook her head, lips pressed into a thin line. She tapped the screen again, scrolling back through the list. Then she looked up, voice gentle but firm. "Mr. Carter, I'm sorry, but I don't see your reservation." A ripple of surprise ran through him. He had confirmed the booking the night before via the hotel's private director channel. The desk should have had his name in bold type, yet Emily seemed genuinely puzzled. Michael squared his shoulders and spoke evenly. "I booked a deluxe suite," he said, "with a city view. My confirmation number is H9321F. She typed his number into the system and frowned again. The screen showed no match. The gentle rise and fall of the lobby's air conditioning hummed around them, as if soothing a small glitch in the morning. Michael felt a tightening in his chest. He had come here to find mistakes, but not like this. "I'm sorry," Emily said again. "There's nothing under that confirmation." She glanced up briefly, searching his face for a sign of frustration. When she saw only polite calm, her shoulders relaxed. "I can create a new reservation for you, sir, if you'd like." Her eagerness caught his attention. It was a small detail, but in Michael's mind it mattered. He watched as she opened a new booking screen, her fingers poised over the keyboard. He could hear his own pulse in his ears. Was this the complacency he was meant to uncover? Or was it just a hiccup in the system? He had no which. "Please," he said softly, "go ahead." As Emily began typing, Michael leaned forward slightly, resting his forearms on the counter. He watched her fill in the blanks. Name, dates, room type. Her back was straight, her movements sure. There was pride in her work. Yet something else, a flicker of embarrassment perhaps, crossed her face as she typed his last name again. Michael swallowed. He let himself relax a fraction. This was the moment he had come for, to see how the team would react under pressure. He had practiced this scenario in his head countless times, imagining every variation of response. Yet nothing had prepared him for the surge of emotion that rose now, a mingling of impatience, curiosity, and an odd spark of excitement. Emily finished the reservation and printed a key card. She slid it across the counter to him with an apologetic smile. "I've reserved you the deluxe suite on the 12th floor, City View," she said. "Please accept my apologies for the confusion." He took the card, feeling its weight. "Thank you, Emily," he replied. "I appreciate your help." She nodded and looked away, turning to greet the next guest, who was just entering. Michael pocketed the card and straightened his tie. He stepped back from the counter, letting his gaze drift over the lobby once more. The mood had shifted. A hint of tension lingered in the air, like the faint aftertaste of strong coffee. But the lobby resumed its composed calm, ready to welcome the day. Michael paused in the middle of the marble floor. In that stillness, he sensed the gap between expectation and reality. He thought of the board's instructions, of the statistics he would later share about first contact service failures. But even as a CEO who lived in data and projections, he found himself intrigued by the human side of this glitch. A low rumble announced the arrival of a hotel shuttle at the curb outside. He could see through the glass doors as a line of black SUVs drew up, chauffeurs in crisp uniforms opening doors for suited executives and wide-eyed tourists alike. The city beyond the lobby buzzed with its own urgency, horns, distant sirens, the steady flow of commuters. Inside, however, time felt suspended, as though he stood at the edge of two worlds, the one he ran, mapped in spreadsheets and boardroom votes, and the one he sought to understand more deeply, measured in moments of human connection. Michael lifted his chin and took a step forward, briefcase in hand. The elevator bank waited ahead, its doors closed like the lids of ancient stone monuments. He pressed the button for the 12th floor, and the panel glowed beneath his finger. The lobby lights reflected in the polished surface, fragmenting into a million tiny stars that danced at his feet. As the doors slid open, with a delicate whoosh, Michael hesitated only for breath. Then he stepped inside, folder and key card secure in his pocket, and the doors closed behind him. The elevator hummed upward, carrying him into the unknown floors above, a private world where the real test would begin. In the mirror across from him, he met his own gaze, steady, curious, determined. The journey up felt both brief and endless. At times, he imagined Emily's face at the desk, the brief confusion in her eyes, and wondered what ripple this small mistake would cause. He did not yet know the answers, but he was ready to discover them, floor by floor, moment by moment. And somewhere ahead, in the quiet of the corridor beyond the elevator, the true story was waiting to unfold. Michael stepped out of the elevator and paused, letting the soft carpet cushion his feet. The corridor lights were low, bathing the walls in a warm glow that deepened the burgundy of the carpet. He could smell faint traces of lavender from the hallway diffusers, a calming scent meant to soothe guests after a long day. But Michael felt none of the intended calm. His heartbeat thrummed in his ears like distant drums. He held the key card between his fingertips, its plastic edge pressing into his palm. Room 1205. He pressed the card against the reader and heard a soft click. The door swung open, revealing a scene that froze him in place. The room was not as he'd left it this morning. The desk lamp, which he was sure he had switched off, glowed with a pale yellow half-light. His suitcase lay open on the bed, clothes spilled over the duvet in a careless scatter. A chill brushed his skin as he stepped forward, each footstep echoing across polished marble tile near the window. He dropped the key card on the edge of the desk and swept his gaze across the room. The curtains were drawn slightly aside, as if someone had peered through the glass into the city below. His heart sank. He had placed strict instructions with security and housekeeping. No entry without his approval. Yet here was proof someone had defied that order. His pulse hammered against his ribs. On the small writing desk lay a single black envelope. The paper was thick, matte, and devoid of any name or stamp. Yet in the center, an elegant silver script spelled out Michael Carter. He took a careful step toward it, the hairs on his arms standing on end. His fingers trembled as he lifted the flap. Inside lay a letter on heavy cream stationery, the words handwritten in dark ink. He slid off the desk stool and sat, the leather creaking beneath him. "Good morning, Michael," the letter began. "Or so you thought. By the time you read these lines, the game will already be in motion. You have looked for cracks in service, but you missed the cracks in loyalty. Someone very close to you will turn your world upside down. Watch your back." The handwriting was precise, confident, yet unfamiliar. He read the lines twice, as if the second time might erase the message's weight. A cold knot formed in his stomach. He looked around the room for hidden cameras or microphones, paranoid thoughts, but justified. This was no ordinary prank. Whoever wrote this knew his movements, his routines. They knew he would be in this room at this exact hour. He clenched the letter, feeling the edges press into his palm. The scent of ink and paper felt sharp, electric. He stood abruptly, the chair scraping against the tile. Michael crossed to the window and pulled the curtains all the way back, flooding the room with daylight. Outside, the city pulsed with life. Cars weaving along crowded streets, distant horns, the dull roar of morning. Inside, however, the silence pressed in on him. He pressed a palm against the glass, fingers splayed, and took a breath. He needed answers, but he did not yet know the questions. His phone buzzed on the bedside table. He snatched it up. The screen showed a message from his personal assistant, Olivia Grant. Meeting in the boardroom at 11. Don't be late. He stared at the text, mind spinning. The boardroom. Of course, their planned session on guest satisfaction, which he had agreed to attend in disguise tomorrow. But the letter in his hand made everything feel off. He typed back, running behind. Bagged a system glitch. Watch for my call. He hit send before hesitating, then locked the phone. Michael returned to the desk. He placed the letter in his suit jacket pocket, careful not to crease it. He opened the minibar to pour himself a glass of water, but paused. He remembered that he had hidden a small recorder under the pillow, just in case he needed proof of any odd service incidents. He reached under the pillow and retrieved a slender device. Pressing play, he held it up to his ear. A soft click, then a male voice. Yes, sir, we'll have the suite ready, just as you like. That meant the recorder had captured someone else's voice, someone who had entered earlier. Michael frowned. He walked across the room, each step measured, and pressed the delete button on the recorder. If his own staff discovered the device, they might notice and panic. But he had to be discreet. He tucked it into his jacket pocket alongside the letter. His mind raced. He thought of Emily at the desk downstairs, her polite smiles tinged with uncertainty. He wondered if she had spoken to someone about him, or if she, too, had been deceived. A knock at the door startled him. He froze, the recorder buzzing faintly in his pocket. The knock came again, soft and deliberate. Michael's heart surged. He unclipped the letter, slipping it into an inner pocket, and smoothed his suit. He strode to the door, bracing himself. Through the peephole, he saw a housekeeping cart and a woman in a gray blazer pushing it, Sarah Morales, the floor supervisor. He had met her once at a staff briefing. Her face was pale, eyes wide. He opened the door a crack. Sarah, he asked quietly. She half smiled, then looked away. Mr. Carter, she breathed. I'm sorry to bother you. Her voice trembled. What happened? Michael asked, stepping aside to let her in. She ducked under the cart and entered, closing the door behind her. He watched her, noting the way her shoulders hunched as if carrying an unseen weight. Sarah moved to the desk, avoiding his gaze. I found this on the floor, in the hallway, she said, laying a small white card down. It read in neat print, Your empire is not as secure as you believe. Michael glanced at it, a cold wave washing over him. I don't know where it came from, she added quickly, but I thought you should have it. He pocketed the card without looking. Thank you, Sarah. Did you see anyone else around? She shook her head. No, sir. I was the only one on the floor. Her lips quivered. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have. You did the right thing. Michael's voice softened. He saw tears brimming in her eyes. Thank you. He paused, then asked more quietly, Are you all right? She swallowed hard and nodded. Yes, just worried. She cleared her throat. If there's anything else I can... Not right now, he said gently. Please go about your work. He guided her to the door and watched as she pushed the cart away. As the hum of the hallway receded, Michael closed the door and leaned against it, exhaling slowly. He turned back to the desk, unsettled. 2 messages, 2 warnings. Whoever was behind this knew his name, his schedule, his routines. They had slipped notes under 2 different doors, Sarah's and his. They wanted him to know he was exposed, vulnerable. And they had chosen a moment when he least expected it. His mind drifted back to Emily. At reception, she hesitated over his name, then rebooked him without question. Now, Michael wondered if that hesitation had been more than confusion, if her doubt had been genuine or staged to see his reaction. He shook his head. He could not let suspicion paralyze him. He needed a plan. He opened the minibar again, this time taking the small bottle of whiskey he had stashed for emergencies. He poured a measure into the glass and held it up to the light. The amber liquid caught the glow of the desk lamp, shimmering like liquid gold. He took a slow sip, letting the warmth spread through his chest. He felt steadier. He placed the glass down and crossed to the window. Below, the city moved relentlessly. Cars trailing red lights, pedestrians gathering at crosswalks, distant flashes of neon bleeding into the dawn. From up here, everything seemed small, manageable. Yet those black letters on white cards felt enormous. Michael pressed a finger to his temple and closed his eyes. He recalled his father's words from their last board retreat. Your greatest strength is in seeing what others miss. He had learned to read numbers, strategies, and shareholders' hidden agendas. But this was a different game, a personal one. He would need to lean on skills he rarely used: intuition, gut feelings, and trust in a few chosen allies. He opened his eyes and set the glass aside. He would call James Peterson, his head of security, the only man he trusted to handle this discreetly. And he would make contact with Olivia to delay the board meeting until he had a clearer picture. Then, piece by piece, he would uncover who was trying to topple him from within. But first, he had a decision to make. Would he stay in the suite, under threat, or would he move to another room, further from prying eyes? He picked up the letter again and read the final line. Watch your back. He felt the weight of those words, heavier than any file or contract he had ever signed. He squared his shoulders. Let them watch. He would watch back even more closely. He would turn this disruption into opportunity, hunting down the hidden motives behind each gesture. And he would emerge stronger on the other side. If he survived, Michael put the letter down, took a deep breath, and pressed his phone to his ear. As he waited for the dialed tone, he stood tall in the center of the room, the city's hum below him, threats circling like vultures. The game was on. Michael settled into the high-backed armchair in the corner of the lobby lounge, the same chair he'd claimed on countless board retreats, its leather worn smooth by years of ambition and late-night strategy sessions. He tapped his phone twice, then spoke into the receiver. James, it's me. I need eyes on the 12th floor, discreetly. On the other end, James Peterson's calm baritone framed itself against the faint echoes of a security office. Understood, sir. Cameras are live. I'll have Greg ice the hallway and check door logs. Michael closed his eyes and pressed his fingers to his temples. No alarms, James. If whoever's behind this smells like a trap, they'll disappear. He pictured James's steady gray eyes, loyal, unflappable, and realized how rare trust felt these days. He exhaled, slipping the recorder deeper into his pocket. Thanks, he said quietly. Keep me posted. As he hung up, he felt the first stirrings of hope, a small alliance, a single line he could hold onto amid the shifting currents below his polished calm. He dialed Olivia Grant next, listening to her rapid ring tone before she answered breathlessly. Michael, everything okay? Her voice shimmered with businesslike warmth, but he detected fatigue underneath. Months of managing his calendar, smoothing over board tensions, juggling shareholders. Running behind, he said, I'd like to push the board meeting to tomorrow afternoon. There was a pause, faint enough that he might have imagined it. Then, we have investors flying in tonight. They'll notice. Olivia's tone edged toward worry. He forced a gentle firmness. I know, but I need time to sort out a situation. I'll send you notes on the fly. He caught her inhale, deep and hesitant. Understood, she said at last. I'll handle it. He hung up, then sank back, his chest tight. He'd never let work crowd out personal trust before. But now he wondered if he'd ever truly let anyone in. Glancing around the lobby, Michael's gaze fell on Emily at the desk. He approached her slowly, mindful of her composure. She looked up as he neared, adjusting her name tag with a small smile that trembled at the edges. Mr. Carter, she said, voice steady but soft. He inclined his head. Emily, thank you for handling my reservation this morning. She blinked, a faint blush rising on her cheeks. Of course, sir. I'm sorry about the mix-up. He folded his hands on the counter and met her eyes. It wasn't your fault. You did exactly what you needed to. Silence settled between them, respectful and honest. Then he added, This place, it means a lot to me. Your work keeps all of it running. Her shoulders relaxed. For a moment, they shared a polite understanding, two people tethered by the weight of unseen expectations. Emily glanced down, smoothing the linen of the desk. I've been here 5 years, she said quietly. When I started, I dreamed of making people feel at home. She met his gaze again. But sometimes it feels like a machine. Policies over people. Her words hovered in the hush of the lobby. Michael felt a familiar prickle of agreement. He straightened. We'll fix that. I promise. She studied him, wariness and hope mingling in her brown eyes. I'd like that, she said. Then she clicked her heels together and stepped back. Excuse me, sir. I have a guest to greet. He watched her move, noticing how her back stiffened in the uniform, how she dipped her chin to the next arrival. He felt respect for her pride and a pang of regret that even a CEO could forget what it meant to greet someone by name. In the hallway outside, Sarah Morales spotted him and paused behind her cleaning cart. Her eyes, still red-rimmed from earlier years, flicked up. Michael halted beside her. Sarah, he greeted softly. She cleared her throat and stood straight, pushing the cart aside. Sir. Her voice wavered. He held up his hand in a gentle gesture. Thank you again for the card. She nodded, face earnest. I just wanted you to know. He nodded back. Then, emboldened by her courage, he asked, Are you all right moving forward today? Sarah's lips trembled. This kind of message, it brought back memories. She glanced at the cart, steeling herself. When I was young, a flood at a hotel killed my brother. I thought I heard water rushing again. Her confession tumbled out in a whisper. Michael felt a knot in his chest. I'm sorry, he said, genuine and low. You did the right thing to bring this to me. She exhaled, relief and gratitude mingling on her face before she pushed her cart down the corridor. Michael watched her go, struck by how personal history shaped her every step. He leaned against the cool wall and let his mind drift. Here were two women bound by their stakes in this building. Emily, whose pride in service had been bruised by bureaucracy. Sarah, who still bore scars from past tragedy. He thought of his own scars, a childhood spent in mansions and boardrooms, a father's sudden heart attack at 60 that left him alone at 23 to navigate shareholders and family expectations. He closed his eyes, picturing his father's calm reassurance after every new crisis. Now the roles were reversed. He had to be the protector, the one with answers, but inside he felt raw, both leader and child at once. A crisp voice interrupted his reverie. Michael. He turned to see David Marks, the hotel's general manager, stepping out of the private elevator bank. David's suit was impeccably tailored, his tie a bold burgundy. He smiled, professional, maybe too practiced. I wanted to update you on housekeeping protocols. We've increased random keycard audits. Michael smiled back, nodding. Good, he said. James is monitoring now, too. David's eyes flickered, just a hint of something Michael recognized from past boardroom debates. Ambition. Excellent. I also spoke with Olivia. She's arranging a separate briefing on guest feedback. Michael felt a mild surprise. She told me she'd wait for my word. David gave a small shrug. She asked for permission, but I encouraged a preliminary review. His tone was light, but Michael sensed an underlying push, a challenge to his authority. I appreciate your initiative, he said, voice even, but let's coordinate next time. David's nod was polite, but his mouth tightened briefly. Michael stepped back, unsettled by the unspoken rivalry. Alone again, Michael walked toward the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. He tapped his phone, calling James's number once more. Anything yet? He asked softly. James's voice crackled. Footage shows someone in a gray blazer, looks like your supervisor, waiting outside 12:05 early this morning. No camera in the room itself. Michael's breath caught. Sarah? He sank into a nearby chair, images spinning. James added, I'll have Greg sweep the floor again tonight. As the call ended, Michael stared at the city skyline, lights blinking like distant beacons. Trust and suspicion warred within him. He realized he had to decide whom to protect and whom to watch. At that moment, Olivia's text arrived. Investors confirmed for today. Board insists on a morning slot. Can't move it. Michael sank back, feeling the walls of his life shrinking. He closed his eyes and pictured Emily's honest eyes, Sarah's trembling confession, David's poised ambition. He exhaled slowly and pressed send. Fine, I'll be there. The word trembled on the screen, both acceptance and defiance. He rose, smoothing his suit and straightening his tie. He would face the board in an hour, stepping into a room of familiar faces who expected confidence. But inside, he carried fresh tensions, loyalties questioned, motives hidden, alliances untested. He walked toward the boardroom doors, a thick walnut frame inscribed with the hotel's crest, mind racing. He would need every ounce of empathy and strategy to navigate the rising storm. As he passed Emily on the way, she gave him a small nod. He offered a brief, genuine smile. The game was shifting, the players were revealing their hands. And Michael Carter, CEO and secret guest, was determined to master the board's next move, even if it meant confronting betrayal within his own house. Michael paused at the threshold of the boardroom, smoothing his tie even though it was already straight. The doors swung open silently, revealing a long mahogany table that gleamed beneath the soft morning light filtering through floor-to-ceiling windows. Plush leather chairs stood empty or half-occupied by familiar faces. Thomas Simmons, the board chair, with his silver hair and precise suit, Catherine Reinholds, the new investor representative, her dark eyes unreadable, and the rest of the board, a circle of power that had shaped his family's legacy for decades. The air held a cool formality, as though the very walls waited for the first word to tip the balance between calm and storm. He offered polite nods as he stepped forward, clutching his folder of reports. Olivia sat to his right, her usually bright eyes shadowed with tension. David Marks took his seat to the left, looking as though he'd practiced every line he would say today. Michael took a deep breath, recalling the letter in room 1205, the one that whispered betrayal. He placed his folder before him and glanced at his watch, a gesture of control. But inside, his chest pounded. Thomas Simmons cleared his throat, voice soft but carrying authority. Good morning, Michael. Thank you for joining us on such short notice. He paused, as if testing the weight of the moment. We have serious matters to discuss. Catherine leaned forward, sliding a stack of printed pages across the table. The documents rustled, crisp and accusing. Michael reached for them, brow furrowing as he scanned the header. Internal audit findings, unauthorized CEO activities. His pulse jumped. He looked up, meeting Catherine's steady gaze. We've discovered, she began, that last night you occupied Suite 1205 under an unrecorded reservation. Our records show no authorization for additional staff to monitor or service that floor at extended hours. Yet your stay incurred substantial overtime charges, security escort fees, and she tapped the pages, a significant deviation from protocol. Michael's heart sank. This was more than a glitch. This was a formal accusation of misuse of company resources. He lifted his eyes to Thomas. I had permission, he said calmly. My assistant arranged it. Olivia's face tightened. Catherine let her hand hover over another stack. That's just it, Catherine continued. Your assistant, Ms. Grant, did not authorize any such stay through official channels. The system shows no such request on file. Olivia shifted, shoulders stiff. I thought I did, she stammered. It was sent. David cleared his throat. Michael's pulse raced as he realized the implication. Olivia's message had never reached the right inbox. Someone had intercepted or overridden it. A hush settled. Thomas Simmons folded his hands. Mr. Carter, we have to protect the company. This breach suggests someone sought to manipulate the system, either to entrap you or to conceal something else. He turned to Catherine. What else have you found? Catherine lifted another paper. We also received anonymous letters dropped under room doors on the 12th floor, warnings to watch your back. The paper stock matches stationery from your private study at home. Michael felt as though the floor tilted beneath him. Stationery from his own printer, someone used his personal letterhead to send threats. He pressed a hand to his chest and leaned forward. This isn't my doing, he said quietly, but the room hummed with doubt. Catherine's expression hardened. Then who? She met his gaze. We believe the orchestrator is inside this building, possibly connected to management or your personal staff. Michael's gaze flicked to Olivia, then to David. Panic surged. How deep did this run? He had tested the front desk. Now, the front line of his own leadership was under suspicion. Before he could answer, Catherine spoke again. There's a motion on the table to initiate an independent investigation and appoint an interim CEO until this matter is resolved. Gasps rippled around the table. Michael felt the world narrow to the point of Catherine's words. Interim CEO. He gripped the table's edge. You can't, he said, voice low but fierce. You have no grounds. Catherine's eyes glinted. We have more than grounds, Michael. We have evidence of document tampering, unauthorized system access, and now these fraudulent letters. Until we know who is behind this, we need to safeguard the company. Olivia's chest heaved. She rose suddenly, pushing her chair back with a screech. Michael, her voice cracked. 1,000 questions filled Michael's mind. Why was she here pleading? Was she the betrayer? Or a pawn? He stood as well, meeting her eyes with a mixture of hurt and disbelief. Olivia, he said gently, what aren't you telling us? Her cheeks glistened. She swallowed. I was pressured. She looked at David. David threatened to resign unless I cooperated. The room fell into deeper silence. David's stare was cold. Michael's heart hammered. David, his trusted general manager behind this? Thomas Simmons steepled his fingers. Ms. Grant, please explain clearly. Olivia took a shaking breath. I received an email instructing me to schedule the meeting at 9 a.m. It was sent from an address that looked like Michael's. I thought it was urgent. Michael's brain raced. A spoofed email from his own account. Who sent it? He demanded. Olivia averted her gaze. I don't know. I assumed it was you. He felt a sharp ache. He had taught her to trust procedure, to trust him, yet she had obeyed a falsified order. Catherine slid another page across the table. We've traced the spoofed address to this building's internal network. The IP points to the security office. Michael's blood grew cold. James Peterson's office, where he had trusted his recorder and data. His mind whirled. His assistant had obeyed a phony email. The general manager had clamped down. Now the board wanted him removed. And all the while, someone had used his own stationery to threaten him, someone with access to his private study. He sank into his chair as though the room had spun. The board members exchanged glances. Thomas Simmons opened his mouth to close the motion. Michael's heart pounded so loudly he feared they could hear it. In that instant, everything shifted. What he had assumed was random sabotage by an outsider was in fact a carefully orchestrated coup from within his inner circle, staff he'd trusted, an officer he'd relied on, a manager he had respected. The betrayal ran deeper than any service glitch. He pressed his palms into the table, meeting Olivia's tear-filled eyes. Did you ever doubt the email? He asked softly. Olivia shook her head, tears spilling. No, I thought it was an emergency. He turned to David. David's jaw clenched, his eyes hardened. Why? Michael's voice was quiet, but carried through the chamber. David's lips parted, ready with an answer, but a sudden knock at the door cut through their tension. James Peterson entered, uniformed and grave. He carried a tablet that glowed beneath a sheet of paper. Mr. Carter, he said, with measured respect, our cameras confirm significant network access from the security office. We also recovered your stationeries used for the letters. The print job ran at 2:15 a.m. on your home printer's backup server. Michael's head snapped up, shock and clarity colliding. The knot in his chest tightened. The betrayal was not only real, it was intimate. Someone had used his own home office to produce threats, commanded his assistant to schedule a false meeting, and manipulated board members to seek his removal. The game had changed, and now that the true enemy was revealed, Michael Carter, wounded but resolute, would turn the tables on those who had plotted in the shadows. Michael left the boardroom, feeling the weight of every gaze on his back. The polished floors of the executive corridor echoed each step, transforming his shoes' soft thuds into a drumbeat of uncertainty. His heart pounded with the knowledge that his closest allies had conspired against him, and that his own home printer had been the instrument of betrayal. The hotel's bright lights felt suddenly harsh, cutting through him like cold steel. He rounded a corner and found himself outside the security office. The door stood ajar, an invitation he had not expected. James Peterson, his head of security, looked up from a bank of monitors. Rows of surveillance feeds flickered across the screens. The lobby, the service elevator, corridors branching off like the spokes of a wheel. James's face was solemn, his shoulders set in lines of duty. "Sir," he said, stepping forward, "I've secured the office and locked the files. I wanted you to see for yourself." Michael peered at the logs displayed. Dozens of unauthorized network accesses traced back to the security console. On a second screen, the email header that Olivia had obeyed glowed in stark text. He swallowed. "James, thank you." His voice caught. He felt the urge to collapse onto a chair, but he forced himself upright. "Keep everything under wraps. If word leaks that security was compromised, half the guests would check out." James nodded. "I've alerted the IT team, but they're working under my command. We'll track every mouse click." Michael exhaled. "Good. I need constant updates." As he turned away, a new sound registered, the soft ring of the hotel's private line on the desk. Michael hesitated. These phones were meant for emergencies. Who would call now? He pressed the receiver to his ear. "Carter." A familiar voice crackled. "Michael, it's Olivia." Relief and pain knotted together. "I need to see you," she said quietly. "Now." He glanced at James, but James gave a curt nod, closing the office door behind Michael. They swept down the corridor toward Olivia's makeshift office in the executive lounge. The walls were lined with leather chairs and dark wood paneling, an ambience meant to impress, now heavy with unspoken tension. Olivia stood beside a small table, her face ashen but determined. "I'm sorry," she began, eyes brimming. "I never meant to hurt you." He folded his arms, fighting his own anger. "You didn't hurt me, Olivia. Someone used your loyalty against both of us." She sank into a nearby chair. "David, he approached me last week, threatened to leak personal files if I didn't obey." Her voice wavered. "He said he had proof of improper expenses on my card. He offered to remove them if I followed his instructions." Michael's chest tightened. "Why didn't you tell me?" She looked away. "I was scared. David's been grooming support for a while. I thought I could handle it, protect you from afar." She paused, tears shining. "I was wrong." He felt a pang of empathy. She had been trapped between two betrayals. He knelt beside her. "We'll fix this," he said gently. He managed a small smile, remembering her precise dedication over the years. "You're one of my best people." Olivia's shoulders shook. "Thank you." He stood and placed a hand on her shoulder. "But until we root out every traitor, everyone at this hotel is at risk. We need to be ruthless." She nodded, steeling herself. Michael left Olivia and retraced his path toward the back corridors of the hotel. He passed the service elevators, where uniformed staff bustled with trays of linen and luggage. Their faces were polite, oblivious to the undercurrents running through their workplace. He caught a glimpse of Sarah Morales rounding a corner, cradling a cart of towels. He stopped her gently. "Sarah, can we talk?" She froze, surprise flashing in her eyes. She nodded, pushing the cart to a halt. They slipped into an empty housekeeping closet. The scent of detergent and wood polish filled the cramped space. Sarah leaned against the wall, her hands knotted. "Sir, I overheard whispers in the staff lounge. Some of the supervisors are saying Mr. Carter is losing it, that he's abusing his position." Her voice trembled. "They think the threats and mix UPS are him trying to scare us." Michael's stomach turned. Rumors like that could spread like wildfire. "Thank you for telling me," he said softly. "We'll put an end to this." He regarded her with genuine concern. "Have you noticed anything else? Unusual orders, strange messages?" Sarah hesitated, then nodded. Emily's name came up. "People wondered why she helped you after the glitch. They think she's involved." Michael closed his eyes. His mind raced. Emily, the receptionist whose soft smile had steadied him that morning. Were rumors painting her as a conspirator? He needed to protect her. He straightened and gave Sarah a reassuring look. You're doing the right thing by speaking up. If you hear more, tell James or me immediately. She swallowed and nodded. Yes, sir. He left the closet, determination burning in his chest. He would quash those rumors and safeguard his team's reputations. He headed back to the main lobby, but paused. A small knot of guests had gathered around a hotel notice board. Michael edged closer. A typed memo announced, due to an ongoing internal review, certain services may be temporarily limited. We apologize for any inconvenience. He winced. That notice had his signature, David's doing undoubtedly. He moved to rip it down, but a sharp tug on his sleeve stopped him. Mr. Carter? Emily's voice was soft in his ear. He turned to find her beside him, eyes glistening. They're talking, she whispered. I saw a Mrs. Kent from room 908 ask about the notice. People are worried. He scanned the lobby. Staff exchanging furtive glances, guests whispering. The elegant calm had fractured. He felt the weight of responsibility crash down again. He drew Emily aside. We need to remove that notice immediately and reassure guests personally. Can you help me? She straightened, determination edging her gentle demeanor. Of course. He handed her his master keycard. Let's do it quietly. Together, they slipped behind the front desk. Michael signaled a bellhop to summon a printing specialist. Tell them to bring new stationery and my personal seal. He moved swiftly, drafting a fresh notice that assured full services and thanked guests for their patience. Emily watched him, her brow furrowed. You want me to post this? He asked. She nodded. Yes, they'll trust your words more than the last one. He smiled, a brief crack of light in his storm. Thank you, Emily. As Emily replaced the notice, Michael slipped away toward the executive elevators. He needed to reach David's office. He found the door ajar, papers scattered across the mahogany desk. The phone lay off the hook, its wire recoiling like a snake. He paused in the hallway, pulsing with adrenaline. Confronting David now would force answers, but might also spark violence. He took a breath, remembering his father's calm counsel. Face your fears, son, but never lose your head. He stepped into the office. David looked up, expression guarded. Michael, he said, evenly. I was wondering when you'd come. Michael closed the door behind him. Why, David? His voice was steady, but his heart thundered. Why betray me? David stood and walked around the desk, hands in his pockets. You're blind, Michael. You care more for Emily's smiles and Sarah's tears than for this hotel's bottom line. He gestured around at the walls, lined with photos of the Carter family. This business deserves leadership with a backbone. Michael felt anger flare. You think I'm weak? You robbed me of my sleep with threats and false memos. He stepped forward. You used Olivia, Sarah, even your own security team to push me out. David's jaw tightened. It was a necessary purge. Michael shook his head. You're mistaken if you think I'll let you take this place. He advanced on the desk. Name your price. What must I sacrifice to keep control? David's lips curved into a cold smile. It's not a price you can pay, Michael. The board thinks they need stability. I offered it. He paused, his gaze hard. If you want to regain your seat, you'll have to prove your strength. Michael's fists clenched. Then you'll get your proof. He grabbed a folder from the desk, David's quarterly reports, and waved it. We'll show the board who's been sabotaging profits. David's eyes narrowed. You won't have the time. Michael's pulse surged. I'll make time. Michael left David's office, mind racing. He had ignited the next round, but he needed allies, and fast. He thought of Olivia in the lounge, of Sarah waiting with new-made carts on the 12th floor, of Emily holding that fresh notice. He plotted his next moves. Secure the board's support, expose David's. He pressed his ear to the door, but heard only his own heartbeat. He slipped in, the room basking in afternoon light. The cream stationery waited on the desk and used. Michael exhaled. He sat on the edge of the bed, sliding his fingers over the smooth cover. He stared at his own reflection in the window's glass, tall, tense, determined. He realized then that this battle was no longer about service protocols or boardroom politics. It was a test of his character. How he led, whom he protected, how he reclaimed trust. He would have to balance transparency with discretion, showing strength without cruelty. He would have to confront each betrayer and forgive those coerced, rebuilding bonds that had been shattered. He rose and pressed his palm to the cool glass, looking down at the streets below. Each light was a life, each person a potential ally or adversary. His empire felt fragile, yet he knew its true power lay not in buildings or profits, but in the people who believed in him. He would earn that belief again. The corridor light hummed softly behind him as he stepped away from the window. The next move would define his legacy. His jaw set with resolve, Michael Carter strode out of room 1205, ready to meet the storm. The tension that had threatened to break him would instead forge a stronger leader and a more united family under his name. Michael stepped into the boardroom, one last time, the air thick with expectation. Sunlight slanted through the windows, casting long shadows across the polished mahogany table, as if the day itself waited for what would come next. Thomas Simmons and Catherine Reinholds sat at the head, their faces calm masks. Olivia and David flanked them, poised like gladiators in armor. Michael felt the weight of every gaze, board members, senior staff, even Emily lingering at the doorway, her eyes bright with hope. He took the empty chair directly opposite Thomas. The hush was tangible, even the soft hum of the air conditioner seemed to hold its breath. Michael cleared his throat, lifted a single folder from the stack before him, and laid it gently on the table. "Thank you all for reconvening," he began, voice steady but charged with emotion. "Today we learn the truth." He opened the folder to reveal printouts of server logs and email headers. The images were stark. Timestamps at 2:15 a.m., network accesses from the security console, a trail leading from David Mark's workstation straight to the spoofed emails that had triggered the chaos. Gasps rippled around the table. Catherine leaned forward, scanning the pages. Michael pressed on, each word measured. "These logs show who manipulated our systems. These headers prove who sent those false orders to Olivia and who printed those threatening letters on my own stationery." He looked directly at David. "You thought you could unseat me. You believed that by sowing doubt you could pretend to save this company and win its leadership." David's jaw tightened. He opened his mouth, but Michael went on, softer now. "You used fear as your weapon. You coerced my assistant and brought shame upon loyal staff." He let the silence settle around David like a shroud. Then Michael turned to Olivia, whose cheeks were streaked with tears. "Olivia, thank you for your courage in speaking up." He rose and crossed the room to her side. "I know you were afraid, but you chose honesty in the end. That matters more than any mistake." He laid a gentle hand on her shoulder. She nodded, relief and gratitude flickering in her eyes. He returned to the center and addressed the assembled board. "This hotel stands on service, on trust between us, guest to staff, leader to team. When trust is broken, everything falls apart." He paused, letting the truth sink in. "I asked for hidden flaws in our operations. I never imagined I'd find betrayal in plain sight." His gaze moved to Sarah and Emily, standing quietly by the door. "These two reminded me what this place is about, genuine care for every person who walks through our doors." Emily stepped forward, voice soft but clear. "Mr. Carter, I'm proud to work here. I've learned that honesty isn't just policy, it's the heart of real service." Sarah added, "And I've learned that courage can mean sharing painful truths so we can heal." Michael nodded, eyes glistening. Around the table, faces shifted from shock to reflection. Thomas Simmons leaned back, steepling his fingers. "Michael, your evidence is conclusive." He looked at Catherine. "I move to reject the motion for an interim CEO and to remove David Marks as general manager." Catherine hesitated, then inclined her head. She spoke with measured authority. "I second the motion. This board stands with the rightful leader." David's face went pale. He stood abruptly, voice tight. "You will regret this," he spat, but no one rose to his defense. One by one, the board members voted and the motion passed. Silence followed, broken only by the soft click of the gavel. Michael felt his chest loosen, relief mingling with sorrow. He rose and faced David across the table. "I won't press charges," he said quietly. "But I hope you learn from this that leadership is service, not power." David's shoulders slumped. He turned and left the room without another word. Michael sank into his chair, exhaustion blooming inside him. Thomas laid a hand on his shoulder. "Well done, son," he said, voice warm. "You led not just with your mind, but with your heart." Michael offered a tired smile, the first real one of the day. Later, in the quiet of his restored suite, Michael summoned his inner circle, Olivia, Emily, James, and Sarah. The room glowed with late afternoon light, the cityscape beyond stretching toward the horizon. Michael stood before them, safe at last but changed by what he had learned. "I asked you all to step forward today," he began, "because this hotel is more than bricks and profit margins. It's about people, real people with dreams and fears and stories worth listening to. You reminded me of that." He looked at each of them in turn. Olivia's unwavering loyalty, Emily's gentle strength, James's steadfast vigilance, Sarah's quiet bravery. "Thank you." Emily smiled and Sarah's eyes shone. Olivia dabbed at her cheeks. James nodded, cool and professional but proud. Michael held their gazes. "I promise to lead differently from now on. I'll be present. I'll listen. And I'll never forget that every name on every reservation is a person trusting us with their stay." He reached into his pocket and pulled out the single black envelope from long ago. He held it out. This letter said to watch my back. "Today, I realize that watching your back isn't about suspicion, it's about standing together. So, let's burn this." With a flick, he dropped it into the fireplace Emily had prepared. The paper curled and went black in the flames. They watched as whispered threats turned to ash. The group stood together against the hearth's warm glow. Outside, the city lights began to sparkle as dusk fell. Michael stepped forward, looking out the window. "Tomorrow, we reopen the 12th floor, fully staffed, fully supported. We'll send personal letters of thanks to every guest from this ordeal. And we'll share our story not out of pride, but so others see that even when trust is broken, it can be rebuilt." He turned back to them, hope in his eyes. "Let's make this hotel not just the finest in town, but the most human." And in that moment, surrounded by people he trusted, Michael Carter felt the full weight and wonder of leadership. Weeks later, Michael stood once more in the grand lobby. Fresh flowers bloomed at the florist stand, and the chandelier above sparkled like morning dew. He watched Emily greet arriving guests by name, watched Sarah guide a family to their rooms with gentle confidence. Olivia coordinated the breakfast service, smiles passing like currency. James oversaw seamless security, unseen but ever present. Michael inhaled deeply. He thought of the threats, the betrayals, the nearly shattered trust, and how, through it all, he had learned to lead with compassion as much as with conviction. The city beyond the windows buzzed with life, but inside, there was a calm power that no letter, no rumor, no false email could ever undo. He lifted his chin, the past's shadows behind him, and stepped forward into the flow of welcoming guests, CEO and caretaker both, ready for whatever the next chapter would bring. And as he walked, he felt for the first time in a long time that he was exactly where he belonged. In the weeks that followed the boardroom reckoning, Carter's crest seemed to breathe anew. The corridors carried quiet laughter alongside the usual hum of guests' footsteps, and the lobby chandelier sparkled like a promise rather than a warning. Michael Carter found himself walking those halls each morning with a lighter step, though the weight of what he'd learned still rested in his chest. He paused by the reception desk to watch Emily Thompson greet a family from out of town. She knelt to their daughter's eye level, pointing out a carved wooden giraffe. Emily then turned, her own smile bright, and caught Michael's gaze for a brief moment of shared pride. He nodded, and she returned to her post. In that simple exchange, he saw the heart of his hotel, service offered from genuine care. Later that day, he joined Olivia Grant in the executive dining room for lunch. The table was set with white linens and fresh basil bouquets, but the real feast was the conversation. Olivia spoke of the new loyalty program she designed, one that rewarded staff for small acts of kindness just as much as for upselling sweets. She described how a housekeeper had been inspired to leave handwritten thank you notes for long-term guests, and how that detail had led to a surge in 5-star reviews online. Michael listened, amazed at how quickly generosity could become contagious. "You've done remarkable work," he said, resting his hand on her shoulder. Olivia glanced up, cheeks coloring. "It's because you gave me the room to try," she replied. "You trusted me even after I almost cost you everything." Her words, echoing that admission in the boardroom, still filled him with tenderness and remorse. He offered a genuine smile. "You showed me that trust is not a one-time act, but an ongoing choice." After lunch, Michael moved through the service corridors, where Sarah Morales oversaw a new training session for housekeeping. He watched her guide a group of staff through delicate fabric folding techniques, her voice patient yet firm. At one point, a trainee spilled a bottle of polish, and the others began to laugh, until Sarah knelt and, without embarrassment, cleaned up the mess with the trainee beside her. Michael's heart swelled. In that moment, he saw vulnerability turned into leadership, and he realized that his own hardest lessons had become theirs. As the afternoon light shifted to gold, he found James Peterson in the security office. Monitors still displayed every angle of the hotel, but James's posture was more relaxed now that protocols had been overhauled. The security team met weekly to review guest feedback, not just incident reports. James gestured to a screen showing a happy couple taking photos by the rooftop garden. "Our eyes are everywhere," he said, "but now we use them to keep everyone safe and happy, not to catch someone out." Michael nodded. "Thank you, James, for everything." He stepped close and offered a firm handshake that turned into a brief, brotherly hug. James gripped his shoulder. "We have your back, sir," he said, and Michael believed him. Felt it in every corner of the hotel they had rebuilt together. That evening, Michael retreated to his personal study at home, the site once misused to sow fear. He closed the door behind him and stood in the soft glow of the desk lamp. The walls were lined with photos of his father and grandfather who had started this hotel from a single downtown lot. Michael ran his fingers along the frames, thinking of the legacy he had nearly lost. He sank into his leather chair and pulled open a blank journal, the pages crisp and waiting. He wrote slowly, "Power without humility breeds betrayal. Trust without vigilance invites deceit." He paused, letting the words settle. He thought of David Marks and the price of ambition untethered from empathy. He thought of Olivia, Emily, Sarah, and James, whose honesty and courage had restored the soul of the place. He wrote again, "Leadership is a promise to protect hearts, not just interests." When he looked up from the journal, the moonlight spilled through the window and illuminated the stationery he once feared. He picked up a pen and crossed out the old hotel crest stamped on the top of each sheet. Beneath it, he sketched a new emblem. Two hands meeting above the hotel's silhouette, a symbol of partnership and shared purpose. He smiled at the imperfect lines. "This is who we are now," he whispered. The next morning, Michael walked into the grand lobby once more and found Thomas Simmons and Catherine Reinholds waiting. Their faces were warm with genuine respect. Catherine handed him a small package wrapped in blue ribbon. "On behalf of the board," she said, "we want to honor your leadership through these changes." Inside was a simple plaque in recognition of service above self. Michael's throat caught. He looked at Thomas, who gave him a proud nod. As guests drifted past, overhearing heartfelt conversations and seeing staff greet them by name, Michael felt the air change around him. No longer was Carter's Crest simply a place of luxury. It had become a living testament to what a business could be when people mattered most. The moral of his story was clear. True strength lay not in dominating others, but in lifting them up. That afternoon, Michael invited his inner circle, Olivia, Emily, Sarah, and James, to join him on the rooftop garden, where lanterns hung among fragrant jasmine vines. They toasted to new beginnings with glasses of sparkling elderflower lemonade. In the fading light, they laughed and shared memories of the ordeal, acknowledging how fear had threatened to divide them and how trust had bound them back together. Michael raised his glass. "To have courage," he said softly, "to empathy, and to the knowledge that when we stand by each other, no threat, inside or out, can break us." They clinked glasses, and in their faces he saw renewed purpose and peace. As the lanterns flickered under a velvet sky, Michael gazed out over the city lights. He remembered the anonymous cards and the letter in the black envelope, the moment when all he believed felt under siege. Now, those fears were ashes replaced by a guiding light. He breathed deeply, savoring both relief and resolve. Back in his study that night, Michael returned to his journal. He wrote a final entry. "A leader's true legacy is measured not by profits, but by the lives touched, the trust earned, and the courage to face one's own flaws." He closed the book and placed it on the shelf alongside his family's records. In the quiet that followed, Michael Carter understood that the story of Carter's Crest was never really about a hotel. It was about the human spirit, its capacity for betrayal and redemption, and the moral choice to lead with a heart wide open. And as he blew out the lamp, the darkness felt less like a threat and more like a canvas on which tomorrow's light would shine even brighter. Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like it, share it with your friends, and subscribe to the channel for more meaningful stories. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next video.